Okay. Okay, Shavua Tov to everybody. Good Yontif for Pesach Sheni. So, on our Chag Sameach, on our agenda today, our menu, we're going to discuss Pesach Sheni, Lag Ba'omer, and we're going to continue from Halichas Bas Yisrael, where we left off in last class. Okay, so Pesach Sheni is, we know its first sources in the Torah, in Parshas Beha'aleischa. That's to those Jews who were busy dealing with the duties, the rabbinical duties of taking care of funerals, and therefore they were impure, Tami Lameis, when the time came to bring the carbon. As in the desert, the Pesach sacrifice was only offered one time. Even though we were there 40 years, we actually only offered it on one occasion, and that was in the second year of the desert. All the rest of the time, it wasn't brought. So that second year, when there were a number of individuals, as we said, the Chevra Kadisha, who were at Tameh, in addition to many other Tameh individuals. And they brought a formal complaint to Moshe. Why should we lose out the ability of doing this karma? And Moshe said, okay, I hear what you guys have to say. Let me check it out with my boss. And he brought it up with Hashem. And a new mitzvah was created in the Torah due to this. There's a lot of things that is learned from this story. First of all, number one, something that we've mentioned before in other classes, that the 613 commands were not all given in one day on Mount Sinai. The ideas were given. They were all inscripted. They were all encrypted. That's a better word. Already in the Torah given on Mount Sinai. But on a revealed, conscious level, we weren't told it all at once. I mean, just imagine getting out of Egypt, being asked to enter this relationship. You're about to enter into the marriage, and the chassan sits down with you. It gives you 613 rules. So he had to do it smart. Hashem did it smart. He gave us 10 rules, 10 commands. Such a big deal. And easy ones. Don't murder, right? And then slowly, over the years, it began adding. So 613 rules. So this is how it was. Throughout the 40 years in the desert, throughout Moshe Rabbeinu's reign, we had an accumulation of 613 mitzvahs. But it wasn't all given consciously in one day, including even Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though he learned the entire Torah when he was up in Sinai, he was not yet instructed the command of Pesach Sheni until the complaint happened. He brought it up to God, and God then instructed him. Another thing we learned from this story is that, often it happens that for different reasons we have exemptions from certain mitzvahs. We're not able to fulfill them. For men, it's more common regarding going to minyan. Going to minyan 3 times a day is something that a Jewish man tries to do, from Jew tries to do. It's one of the focal points of his religious observance. Although sometimes you're not able to make it to minyan. You don't feel well, or you're in an area without a minyan, or whatever the case is, whatever the mitzvah is that a person is having a temporary exemption from. So we learn from this story that a Jew shouldn't take it. He shouldn't be happy, or he shouldn't feel, oh, phew, Baruch Hashem, I don't have to go to minyan today. I get a legal halachic excuse. The rabbi gave me the stamp. A person should be distressed. The person should be upset that he's not able to serve God. Just imagine going to Jerusalem, bring the carbon. It's a bit of a hassle. It is. You have to travel there. You have to shecht it. You don't know where you're going to be staying. You don't know. It's a lot of details you have to work out. And these people were exempt, and they didn't say, "Okay, I'm exempt." That's God's will. What can I do? It's God's will. I'm exempt. But they were distressed about it, and they complained, and they told Hashem. So this is another thing we learn, is that a true servant of God shouldn't remain happy and satisfied with getting exemptions from serving Him. The third thing is, of course, what's emphasized in today's Ayim Yayim and the Chassidus in general, that Pesach Sheni teaches us the lesson that there's no such thing as too late for a Jew. That this is more of a Breslov philosophy that is a plain old Jewish philosophy, just Breslov talks about a lot, is L'olam ein yish. There's no such thing as giving up hope. There's no such thing as ever giving up hope. The Rebbe once wrote this too. There was once a Breslov chassid from the Galil. I don't know where. I think it was near Haifa. He wrote to the Rebbe about a certain situation, and he was in despair, complete despair. And the Rebbe wrote to him, as is well known, a Jew is not allowed to give up hope, and especially for you that you will follow Breslov Chassidus. How can you give up hope? How can you do Yish? How can you give up hope? So Pesach Sheni teaches us that a person can never give up hope, which reminds me of a joke where you have a Breslov Chassid borrowed, a few $1,000s from a few individuals, and unfortunately wasn't able to pay. The due date came once, twice, 3 times. He's not able to pay. He decided to call a meeting with all of his debtors together. And so they all had this meeting, and he tells them, listen, they all thought, of course, he's going to give us the money finally. And he told them, listen, we all know that one of Rabbi Nachman's Torahs is that a person should never give up hope. And therefore, I don't give up hope that I will one day be able to pay every single one of you. But none of you are Breslov Chassidim, so you should already give up hope. Anyways. So this is one of the lessons that's learned from Pesach Sheni, is that there's always an open opportunity in this world. And as we know, the Arizal says, the Gilgal Acher, if a person didn't make it in one Gilgal, Hashem gives him a second chance in a second Gilgal. He's able to refine and fix something that wasn't done, which is a great chesed, a great kindness from God. This whole idea of a Gilgal is considered a great kindness. Okay, so I want to discuss a few pointers of the halachas that used to be kept in the actual Pesach Sheni. So, of course, the main aspect of Pesach Sheni was not eating matzah or not saying tachanun today, but rather the eating of the Karban Pesach for whoever was not able to bring it. So, anyone for whatever reason who didn't bring the Karban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, he would have the obligation to bring it the 14th of Iyar. And anyone who was impure, which would include a lot of people, all the Chevra Kadisha that had to deal with a funeral during that week, they were impure, so they weren't able to bring. Any woman who had given birth or was in the Nida period was also impure, was not able to bring. Men who had different situations of evil or that they came into contact with something impure also weren't able to bring. And anyone who was distanced from Jerusalem and didn't make it on time, the bus system wasn't working well, he got delayed, that's it, he's patur. He has to be within the vicinity. So you have to travel the day before. Because if you're not in the vicinity of 15 mil to Jerusalem, you're exempt. You can't bring the carbon. So, we know the public transportation system. We know how it works. And just think about it. Today we have Lag Ba'im, we see all the balagan. Just imagine if the entire Israel, all the Jewish people on earth, have to make their way to Jerusalem. There are obviously going to be no cars allowed. Everyone's going to have to arrive by bus. And you can just imagine there's going to be there were a lot of people who, with the traffic, were the Mak and Rachik. So all those were also who couldn't bring it. They would have to bring it Pesach Sheni. So of the laws of the Pesach Sheni is that it had some laws that were similar to the first Karban and some laws which were different. The similar laws which were that it had to be eaten with matzah and maror. So anyone who would eat the Pesach Sheni tonight, it was eaten tonight, not today. Today was the offering, the sacrifice, but the actual eating of it took place only tonight, the 15th. It would have to be eaten together with matzah and maror, the kairich sandwich. The kairich sandwich that we do in the night of the Seder is in commemoration of the original kairich sandwich that we did in temple times, which we had matzah, not the crackers we have today, but the fluffy lafa type matzahs, together with maror and together with meat. It was a really delicious sandwich. That's what they say. It's what I've heard. And that's all. There was no mitzi matzah. There was no maror. We just went straight right after Haggadah. You washed hands and you went straight to kairich. Straight to kairich. Skipped 2 steps of the Seder, and you would say 3 brachas. You have to share sheg shem son ala chilas matzah umaror upesach. So have in mind that when Mashiach comes, you're going to have to put all your old Haggadahs away, and purchase new Geula Haggadahs. The exile Haggadahs are going to be extinct. We can put them in a museum for everyone to see what they look like, but we're not going to be able to follow the same. The Seder will no longer be Mesudar, as they say. It will be a different order. Now, interestingly, to note how to cook it, right? Your husbands are going to come back with this huge sheep from a lamb from Jerusalem, and they bring it home, and they bring it to their wives to cook. How do you cook it? So no one should get any anxieties right now. I'm sure it'll be, I'm sure when Mashiach comes, things will be a lot more simple. Maybe there'll be a video, a demonstration of how to do it. But just a few of the halachas are as follows. This is Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. It doesn't matter which Pesach. And it would be quite often that the husband and most of the family did Pesach Rishon, but other parts of the family had to do Pesach Sheni. If one of the daughters was a nida, if the wife was after birth. All these things would require her to do it in the second Pesach. So it could be in one family, you were having, in essence, doing this whole thing twice. And so the way it was cooked, it had some very specific laws for both Pesachim. It was not allowed to be cooked. It had to be roasted. And due to that, it had very specific details of the roasting, such as you couldn't cook it on any surface at all. So how would you cook it? It had to be cooked over fire. Now, how do you cook it over fire? You need a skewer, but a skewer is a surface. So the surface is touching the meat. So how does it, you have to hover it in the air. So you have to go to outer space and cook it. How do you cook it? Gravity pulls it down. It's going to fall. So, and you can't use metal to keep it up. So you would have to use wood, and the wood would have to be dry. The reason for that is because wood doesn't get as hot as metal. If the metal skewers used, the metal gets hot, and the metal ends up cooking the meat. You have to cook it with fire. The whole thing has to be cooked in heat of fire alone. So we'd have to use they would have to use a dry wooden skewer, which was made from pomegranate wood, because that was the only dry wood that they would find. I don't know, today maybe they have something else. I have no idea. But so meaning before Pesach, you have to chop down some pomegranate trees and make these nice, long, thick wood skewers that would hang the Pesach offering over the bonfire. Now, it also had to be cooked whole. There was no piece missing. The whole thing. I mean, not the skin, of course, not the fur, right? That stuff you can remove, but the skin. The skin had to stay, but the wool could be removed, of course. You can make a blanket out of that. You don't have to cook that, obviously. Terrible smell. But the innards also had to remain. On the other hand, innards, the kishkas, right? It has liquid, so that's considered cooking, not roasting. So what was done? It says that the carbon Pesach was roasted with its head by its legs. It was like upside down with head down. They still do this in the wild when people go hunting. Even Lag Baimer, now go Lag Baimer if you go early. Even probably right now it's already beginning. They shecht and they roast whole sheep. You've seen it? They roast whole sheep. They do it every year. It's not just 1980. They do it every single year, but it's not done it's not done in the middle of the street. It's in the outskirts of Meron. People set up camps there for the week. Starting today, we have all these people setting up camps, and they have all these. It's a whole festivity. It's the Israeli Woodstock, lahavdil. And so they shecht a lot. They roasted in this fashion, a lot of them. So what was done is that they would then have to take out the innards and put it on top. It had to be roasted together. So this is just preparing everyone not to be too grossed out. That this is how it was done. You can't throw anything out. Nothing gets thrown out. Everything is safe. It had to be eaten by chatzais. You weren't allowed to feed it to a guy or to a non-religious Jew, to someone who wasn't Shomer Shabbos. Now, what of the differences is that in the first Pesach, you can't eat it in a different group. In other words, the way it worked is like this. By both Pesachim, you're not allowed to have any leftovers. You can't have any leftovers at all. You have to eat everything that night, right? It's a great simcha for a family, no leftover food. You have to be completely consumed that night. Now, if I'm one person and I have this huge carbon, I'm not eating a whole sheep in one night. That's a lot to eat. So what would they do? You have chaburas. So let's say if you're a big family, so one sheep will cover the whole family. Everybody will have 2 slices of beef, of lamb chops, and that'll be enough. It'll be finished by then. But don't forget, when we say finish, we mean everything. You can't leave meat on the bones, right? You can't have like people do with the chickens and today. They leave, I don't like that part. There's no such thing. Everything has to be cleaned to the T. Right? Everything has to be cleaned off and eaten, consumed. So you would have a few groups. You would have a few families joined together. Now, Halacha was that by Pesach Rishon, you had to eat it together. You can, here's your piece, everyone go do Hatzlacha on your Seder. No, everyone had to do it together in the Seder in the same place, and you weren't allowed to leave. If somebody went outside to talk to someone with this piece of meat, the piece of meat is now treif. It's treif. It's also not to eat it anymore. If it leaves, it's mechitza. Even if it's in the same room, let's say we enter the hall for a few different Pesach groups that are doing their Seder together in a hotel, for example. And I walked over to one of the other tables with my Pesach meat. No good. You can't eat it anymore. It's treif. It's just like the Lashon in the Rambam is similar to law of a carbon that was taken into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Once it passes the areas of the visions, you can't eat it anymore. So, but the Pesach Sheni doesn't apply. So you can walk around, you can eat in different groups. You don't have to be all together. That's one of the leniencies of the second Pesach. And of course, another major leniency is you don't have to clean your house for chametz again. All right? You can own chametz with the Pesach. You can't eat chametz with it. You have to eat matzah with it. So that's a little complex. So you're going to have to use Pesach dishes. So you're going to have to get used to taking out your Pesach dishes while your house is chametz-dik. And right, you have to use your Pesach dishes, and you have to have Pesach oven to heat it up. You can't have chametz, and obviously you can't drink beer while you're eating it. But on the other hand, you're allowed to own chametz at the same time, so that's not a problem. What about all its innards that you took out? You have to. Right. So what's done with that? It's a good question. Now, I mean, we do know that people do eat the innards. It's called, if you didn't know, then you should know now. If you ever go to a restaurant and you order Murav Yerushalmi, that's what you're eating. So don't think like Jerusalem mixed meat is like, oh, some cool, sauteed beef. No, it's all of the, what they call it, no, in English it's called, what's the word for the inner organs? It's called sweet bread. Sweet bread. Not just brain. It's all the inner organs.
All the inner organs.
All the inner organs.
Not with the ability to eat hearts of the animals?
It's not forbidden. Din, if it was properly cleansed from blood. We do avoid doing so because it makes people have forgetfulness. But they sell heart all the time. Rabbi Yerushalmi has hearts in it. It has hearts. So, till a certain point, I didn't know what it was, and I just thought it was just a cool Jerusalem mix. And when someone actually told me, no, that what you're eating, that's a kidney, I'm like, okay, that's the end of my meal. But back then, people would eat all these parts. So intestines, sure. What do you think kishka is? Well, the intestines were clean. They were clean intestines. You had to clean it beforehand. So halacha, it would be just like any carbon. You clean the intestines before you offer it. So the intestines were completely, cleaned out, sanitized, but ideally everything would have to be eaten. So you can give it to all the Murav Yerushalmi eaters. They can get those parts.
But it has to be consumed?
Yeah, you don't have any leftovers. There can be no leftovers, except the bones. The bones you weren't allowed to eat because you're not allowed to break. Even if you love marrow, you can't break it to suck the marrow. Therefore, it'd have to be burnt the next morning. So tomorrow morning, there would be a big bonfire. Everyone would burn the bones. Bone burning. And of course, any leftovers. And you're too full. What can you do? Everyone's too full. You can't put another thing in your mouth. So that's it. So you have leftovers, you burn it the next day. But this is a good lesson to never place more food on your plate than you can eat. Right? You shouldn't have hungrier eyes than a stomach. Right? In the future, I hope so. I truly hope so. I don't know for certain, but I hope they do some kind of revolution regarding that, because one thing's for sure, all the people coming for Tchias HaMesim are not going to buy it. They're not going to buy the cracker matzahs. They're going to be, this is a fraud, this is a fake, what is this stuff? We've never seen this stuff before.
The Yemenites are really going to clean up because they don't know how to do it.
Okay, so Pesach Sheni sounds like such a beautiful, clear, halachic background, with halachic background day. Why is it clouded in such controversy? So let's go back to the 1700s. In the 1700s, a typical Pesach Sheni was an ordinary day. Nothing happened, nothing changed. You wouldn't even commemorate it. I mean, we no longer have the temple, so we can't bring the carbon Pesach Sheni, so we didn't bring the carbon Pesach Rishon. So nothing was done. Tachanim was said as usual. No one ate matzah on this day. There was no reason for eating matzah on this day. And sometimes they would even fast on Pesach Sheni and say slichus, not just men, even women. Why? Because the Ashkenazi custom is to fast Bahab fasts. Anyone familiar with that? Anyone do it?
What's the name of it?
Bahab. So the old Ashkenazi custom, I say old because regarding the fasting, that has changed. I don't know the date of when they started changing it. We'll discuss it in a moment. Okay, but the custom always was in Ashkenaz to fast for a Monday, Thursday, and Monday after the holiday of Pesach and Sukkot. The reason is because, during holiday time, all the families together, friends are together, people are drinking alcohol. There's a mitzvah deraisa to right to drink. And this can lead to sinful behavior, a mixture of the opposite genders. And therefore, as a tikkun for this, the Chachamim actually set fasting for Monday, Thursday, Monday after the holidays of Pesach and Shavuos. Pesach and Sukkot. So in Sukkot, it takes place in Cheshvan, and it's always the minhag is to wait until the first week of only Cheshvan days. So let's say Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan fell on Tuesday, so you would begin fasting the Monday after. Okay, not Thursday, but the Monday after. So this also by Pesach, same thing. We wait until we wait till the week after Rosh Chodesh Iyar, which now was last week, and that's when Ashkenazim began Bahab. So they started doing Bahab Monday, Thursday, and they're doing it again tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day. So it used to be they would fast and say slichus. Today they don't fast anymore; they just say slichus. Now, until when do they stop fasting? It's an interesting question, but I don't know for certain when. But I do know that there's a story with Reb Chaim Eiser Rudinsky, who was the Rav, the chief rabbi of Vilna, the head of the Bezdin of Vilna, in 1910, 1915, be'erich. And when the Rebbe Rashab wrote a letter in 1901, that when he wrote a letter, 1906, letter 1906 regarding celebrating Yutes Kislev as Rosh Hashanah, as like a new Rosh Hashanah, a new holiday. It was a famous letter, and this letter arrived to the Chassidim, Chabad Chassidim in Vilna. So one of the members of the Bezdin of Reb Chaim Eiser went over to Reb Chaim Eiser and jokingly told him, "Look at the Chassidim. They don't know the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. The first Mishnah says that there's Arba Rosh Hashanah and there's 4 Rosh Hashanahs. Now they added a 5th one. They made a 5th Rosh Hashanah, Yutes Kislev." So Reb Chaim Eiser took it very seriously. And he said back to him, at least by them, by the Chassidim, they're adding an Avodas Hashem. And you, because they had some beef, and this is the beef, and you are trying to subtract and take away Baham. He basically told people you don't have to fast anymore Baham. So we see at least until the 1900s, it was still a custom to fast. To the point, Reb Chaim Eiser wasn't even willing to accept a joke against the Chassidim on Cheshbon of Baham. He said he was upset at him for taking away Baham. He says, you're diminishing an Avodas Hashem. They're at least adding an Avodas Hashem. That's what he said. So you can imagine that in the 1760s, when suddenly in Ashkenazi community they started seeing these weirdly dressed Jews starting to merry make, skip tachanan, eat matzahs, have dancing on Yud Daled Iyar, they took it very, very shockingly. This was never done before. And sometimes when a fellow Bahab, it was even more shocking because this is a day of communal fasting. And the Hasidic community began merrymaking and eating matzah and doing all these things. And this was not taken very easily. Jewish communities, Orthodox Jewry doesn't like changes. We've been burnt a lot with changes. And with the Hasidic movement, it was a good change, but unfortunately many other changes were bad changes. And so we have the right to be skeptical, and we have the right to worry, to put things into context. So they were very worried. This was another Sabbatean movement. So when they put out the Chayrim against the Chassidim in 1772, one of their main complaints was, and they even had the audacity to eat matzah and skip tachanan on Pesach Sheni. Whoever said such a thing that you skip tachanan and you eat matzah Pesach Sheni? So this is one of their major complaints. Quite a sin. Right? This is one of their major complaints. There's a lot of funny complaints they have. And you read it from a historical perspective. Back then, it was very serious. But when you read from a historical perspective, it's you almost chuckle and laughter because it's just such silly complaints that they're making, especially being that today they do it as well. So it's like things how much things have changed. You know?
I don't know. Is it okay to ask the question?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's always been okay to ask a question.
No, but like now particularly. So we talk so much on Pesach Sheni about just eating matzah, but there has to be like something else just than to eat matzah. I mean, are we supposed to be like?
Well, I'll discuss. I'm working my way
there.
to discuss,
Got it.
how we got to eating matzah, where the Chassidim get this from.
Okay.
You know, how did it come about?
Right.
So the tachanan part just makes sense. Someone walked in and said, hey, why not say tachanan today? It's a good, and you know, we always love not saying tachanan.
Yeah.
But the truth is that not saying tachanan, so the idea of not saying tachanan is sourced in many poskim, including Ashkenazi poskim. So even though, as I said, it wasn't so customary back then in the Litvish communities, and the Gra himself personally held that you do have to say tachanan. He held that Pesach Sheni is nothing. You say tachanan regularly, you don't eat matzah. He specifically did not eat matzah. He didn't want to have any resemblance to the Chassidim. So you still have till today some of Litvish Jewry who don't do anything Pesach Sheni. They don't say tachanan. They say tachanan. They don't eat matzah, but it's a very minute few. Most people.
So you're saying just a Hasidic thing?
Not anymore. Originally, it comes from. It was done in certain communities, but wasn't widespread. The Chassidim took it as how did it work back then? You had community customs. So if there was a custom in Amsterdam, Jewry, that custom wasn't done all over Litva. It was just Amsterdam Jewry. So if an individual in that community, let's say in Vilna, started doing a custom in Amsterdam Jewry, they would also look at him weird. There's halachas. You're not allowed to change a minhag halacha.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as everyone does their own minhagim as we know today. Back then, when you move to a city, you unpack all of your old minhagim and leave it. And don't bring it into the city and adapt all the new minhagim of the city. That's how it worked. So, for example, if in the 1800s you were a Chabad Chassid who moved to Belz, you would now become a Belzer Chassid. Congratulations. Or the opposite. That's how it worked. You couldn't be different in a different community. You had to follow community custom. Yeah, I mean, we see how many issues is caused when you have people of a different community move in to this, and change and do changes to the community. The idea is, the idea is not so. We have all the time. We have, religious communities are not happy when non-religious move in. We have, that when you have, let's say, Litvish communities don't really want Chassidim to move in so much. It makes sense. It makes sense because we want to keep things clear. I know today in today's liberal society, everyone says no, everyone has to be happy and live with each other the way it is. But back then there were certain, guidelines in order so there shouldn't be friction. Friction shouldn't be caused when people have opposing views. Each their own type of thing.
Confusion.
Bottom line is that this became widespread. As I said, it has sources in many poskim. I'm not saying tachanan on this day, as well as the minhag of eating matzah is a more obscure minhag. It's first mentioned in the Yavitz, who of course was an Ashkenazi German rabbi from Altona in the 1700s, and he writes about the idea of eating matzah on this day. I'm not aware of any prior source to him. But the Chassidim adapted this. It's also the Baal Shem Tov took this minhag, and it became spread amongst all the Chassidim to eat matzah, and then from there it became spread to Sephardim and pretty much all Ashkenazim today. That except for those who follow the Gra, as I said before, that they even today don't eat matzah. But pretty much today it's a widespread custom amongst the whole world to do this. Now, why we eat matzah is to commemorate the Pesach, just like the Afikoman is eaten Seder night to commemorate the Korban Pesach. So too, this matzah is like the Korban Pesach to commemorate the Pesach Sheni, as we all have to bring the Pesach Sheni. Mashiach would come right now, this second. Then the first thing before, congratulations, Ma, we dance for a few minutes, but that's it. We got to get moving. We got to go to Jerusalem. No time to waste. We got to get to Jerusalem, get the whole family together, and bring the Korban. So this is brought in commemoration of the Korban Pesach. That's what's done. Now, when do we eat the matzah? So there's different customs. The main custom to eat it today, because today was the day that it was actually offered. But there's another custom to eat it tonight, and that's based on the fact that when was it actually eaten? Only tonight.
Oh, the 15th.
The 15th. And
Okay.
some,
After sundown?
yeah, so some eat it tonight after Tzeis Chama at night, after nightfall, and some ate it last night. So what the Rebbe suggests, eat all 3 times. The meticulous eat all 3 times. Last night, today, and tonight.
Wow. I like matzah.
Now we do, although that I said before, the main custom is not to say Tachanun today. That is the main custom brought down specifically regarding Yudalid. You have some who extend it to Tesvav, that also tomorrow they don't say Tachanun, and some take it as far they don't say Tachanun the whole week for 7 whole days, and they say because it's Tashlumin, you have 7 days of makeup for the carbon, 7 days of Tashlumin, so they extended this for quite a long time.
Who's that?
Different Hasidic groups.
But not us.
Chabad, no. Chabad says Tachanun regularly starting tomorrow. Tonight is a bit of a question because the Pesach was eaten tonight, so maybe we shouldn't say tonight's a bit of a question. So tomorrow, so we say anyone who doesn't have sins can be lenient tonight.
Oh,
That'll be our. A question that's discussed in the Rashash, not the Mekubal. There was another Rashash who wrote a commentary on the Talmud Pesachim, and there he discusses the question of whether you're allowed to eat roasted meat today. Can you have barbecues today? And the reason why you shouldn't is because we all know that we're not allowed to roast meat to eat for the night of the Seder, due to the reason that you're not allowed to do anything that's similar to the carbon. Now Pesach Sheni is the same thing, so maybe you shouldn't be allowed to eat roasted meat today. So no barbecues and no getting shawarmas, no eating shawarmas. So bottom line is that even though there is such an opinion, the main ruling follows that it is mutter to do because this whole idea of not eating roasted stuff is only a minhag, and the minhag was never accepted regarding Pesach Sheni, regarding Pesach Rishon. And I don't think that any shawarma stores are going to be machmer like this opinion and not sell shawarma today, but I could be mistaken in that. I think they're going to be lenient.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because a Mahadran store, let's say under Badat the Chavedus or any Mahadran Ashgacha, Mahadran means that we follow all opinions. So I don't think they have any rules about this, but it's interesting to bring up to them that there are opinions who hold it's usher to eat shawarma today. There's an usher to eat shawarma.
Not just shawarma, any meat.
Well, I'm just giving a common example. No, you can eat meat, just not roasted.
Oh.
You can eat meat.
Okay.
Just not roasted meat.
Oh,
well, like shawarma is barbecue.
Right. Okay, fine.
It's
So if you eat the leftover schnitzel from Shabbat.
Well, that's the question. As I said, the halacha is that it's mutter, but there are opinions who are machmir. Okay, let's go straight to our next holiday, Lag BaOmer. So the good news of Lag BaOmer is that it doesn't have any controversy amongst Chassidim and Misnagdim, but it still has controversy. We're going to discuss Lag BaOmer, what it's all about, and we'll just go through the different hagim that are going to be followed starting Wednesday night, Thursday, right? That's Lag BaOmer this year, Wednesday night, Thursday. So we're going to go through the different customs. So everyone is in agreement. There's consensus that Lag BaOmer is a very special day, and something happened that for that reason the Jewish people celebrate. We don't say Tachanun as written in the Shulchan Aruch. That's according to everybody. We seize mourning customs for Ashkenazim. All Ashkenazim seize mourning customs on Lag BaOmer.
Yeah.
We're allowed to take haircuts for those who allow haircuts, so they don't follow the Arizal. They're allowed to get married. You're allowed to have music, shechianu, anything that you were accustomed to restrict during Sfir period is mutter Lag BaOmer for Ashkenazim. Sfardim, however, they follow the Mechaber, who rules you have to follow everything till Lamed Daled, till the 34th. So what they do is they're only going to stop on Friday. So Friday you're going to see all the beard chalakas of Sfardim take place. The hair chalakas of Sfardim take place. There's going to be specifically Friday morning after sunrise of Yud, of the Yud Tes, which is the 34th day of the Omer. The reason for this is we discussed in our previous class in Sfir Saimah because they hold that the 33-day calculation only ends the morning after Lag BaOmer. But they too agree that Lag BaOmer is a special day. And the question is, what is so special? What actually happened? So regarding that, we don't have agreement. We have many different opinions and approaches of what happened. The Ramah writes in the Shulchan Aruch that the reason is because, I'm sorry, this is the Mechaber writes this, not the Ramah. No, okay, backtrack. No, this is a Machlekes Mechaber. Okay, I'll explain. The Ramah, right? The Ashkenazim, he explains that on Lag BaOmer, the last of the 24,000 students died, meaning they stopped dying, and therefore it's a day of celebration, similar to Tu B'Av, right? Tu B'Av, one of the reasons why we commemorate it is because the Meisei Midbar, those who died in the Midbar, stopped dying on that day, so we commemorate that the Gzeira was put to an end. So that is the Ramah's reason, and that's the classical reason that's known. However, the Mechaber's reason, the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, is he doesn't agree with that. He holds that they continue dying even on Lag BaOmer. And therefore, according to his approach, it's not clear what actually happened. Everyone agrees something happened, but it's not clear what happened. Now, there's an obvious question on the Ramah's approach, and that is very simple. What is so happy about celebrating that there were no more students left to die? All 24,000 died, so there was no one left to die. What are we celebrating? That's not happy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say, 24,000 were meant to die and only 23,000 died and therefore 1,000 were saved, okay, that's something to celebrate. But the Gemara says, Kula Mesu, all of them died between Pesach and Atzeres.
Yeah.
So there were no survivors. We know the Gemara lists 5 survivors who became the students afterwards. They weren't included in this decree. So what exactly is, it doesn't, the Ramah's reason doesn't make sense, even if it's true that the end date of the deaths were on Lag BaOmer. So what? That's terrible that culminated all of the students. So it really doesn't make sense. So I did see someone who wanted to bring that there were actually some students who survived, but this answer doesn't make any sense. As I said before, the Gemara explicitly says, Kula Mesu, they all died between Pesach and Atzeres. As far as last time I looked, everyone means everyone. No survivors. So, those are in the so even his reason that he offers is still with a big question mark of understanding. The Mechaber doesn't have any reason at all. And others suggest that on this day, this is one of the Arizal Preis Chaim writes a few reasons. One of the reasons he writes is that on this day, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai got smicha together with the 4 other students, which includes Rabbi Meir. Right? Rabbi Meir, whose yahrzeit is not today, unlike what they are celebrating. His yahrzeit is not, we don't know when his yahrzeit is. The vendors state for economic reasons that his yahrzeit is on Yud Daled Iyar today, and therefore everyone should come to Tveria and visit him. And that's not a bad, that's fine. But it's just that we don't know it's his yahrzeit. It could be. There's a 1 in 354 chance that today is his yahrzeit. There is. We got to give him that.
Why don't we know when his yahrzeit is?
How do we know?
No, why don't we know?
We don't know the yahrzeit of any of the Tanai. There's
No?
not one Tana that we know the yahrzeit of. Even Rashbi is under great cloud. We're going to discuss that soon.
Oh my God.
Okay, but we don't have, it wasn't written down. We don't have records of it. It's not written in the Talmud. So how would we know?
Yeah.
People, we have to understand that today, it's a different generation. We're very into history. There's a Wikipedia page for 10 minutes after something happens. There's already a Wikipedia page and it's documented.
Yeah.
But back then, no one was going to bother with writing a Wikipedia page of when someone passed away. They just didn't bother. I'll give you another example. Back in the day, people didn't mark their birthdays. People didn't know how old they were. They didn't know the day they were born. It was just for what? What's different? What do I gain out of my life when I was born? Yeah, no, I'm being serious. Do the history. People didn't know when they were born. People didn't know their birthdays. People knew better. How old are you? I'm between 60 and 70. What do you mean between? How old are you? People didn't know. Rav Kaduri didn't know his birthday. He didn't know how old he was.
Who?
Rav Kaduri.
No.
He did not know how old he was. No.
And how come we know that he was 103?
We don't know. There's a few verses, 103, 113, 101, 107. There's no consensus.
Yeah, but really, why does it matter how old the person is?
That's why people, I'm just saying, society has changed. People didn't keep records of many different things that today we view as the most important thing in life.
Yeah.
And so therefore we don't have any records of these things. And even regarding areas that they're buried, we only know that mainly due to the Arizal. It's the Arizal who revealed most of the places that people, most Kvarim today are all due to the Arizal, that we have them. I'm saying old Kvarim. He revealed them. If not for him, we really wouldn't know.
Wow.
And so when if the Arizal told us, like for example, we have right here next to Tzfas and the way to between Beria and Tzfas, outside of Beria and the way to the Beria forest, you have over there the general of Shaul, no, not yet. Oh,
Ben
Yoda, right. So
Up near Beria, right?
yeah, so that was revealed by the Arizal. That wasn't around 500 years ago. The Arizal was taking a walk with the student Chaim Vital. It's written in Creates Chaim. It says he was taking a walk there, and all of a sudden he bumped into the Ben Yoda, the general. He says, "Hey, general, what's going on?" They had a conversation, and he told him, "By the way, I'm buried here. That's why I met you. This is my burial spot." And he taught him, Torah there is a very special tzaddik. So that's how the Tzion was built there. But if not for that conversation, we wouldn't have a clue. We wouldn't know where they're buried.
Wow.
So if people don't know when they're born, how do they know when they're chayiv a mitzvah? Bas mitzvah, bar mitzvah.
Right. So obviously they would know, for the sake of being bar bas mitzvah. But after that, what relevance does it have?
Mhm.
So they would know, that my bar mitzvah, took place. They would know for the calculation of the bar mitzvah, it's exactly today. You're right. They would obviously have to keep it for the records for some time. But afterwards, the records are no longer kept. I mean, just think about it. Yes, 50 years later, when was your bar mitzvah?
Mhm.
Which day? I don't remember what day my bar mitzvah was. I only know because of my birthday. I know because we celebrate today birthdays, so we commemorate it. But if we didn't celebrate the birthday since 12, 13 years old and 20, 30 years have passed, some people don't remember what happened last year, let alone what happened 20, 30 years ago, which date it was,
Yeah, well, it could be a good thing. Good, yeah.
The Mendel Fuderfas gave over, he used to say a lot of stories, and some of his stories were very, very colorful. And so one time someone asked him, how do you have such great memory of details of the story? So he says, don't be a fool. I want to tell you something. You should never believe anything anyone tells you, or he says that you shouldn't believe any stories that people tell you. If anyone who used to be in jail, or anyone who was over 70 years old, and I'm both. That's what he said. His stories are more, to Mr. Haskell to get a teaching from it. But the horse,
Wow.
Anyway, so the point is that we don't the memory can fade, and that's why it's written down in Svarim. That's why a person has to record one thing. We should never trust our memory. Cholamayit, if something happens and they want to remember it, there's a heter to write it down, in order so they don't lose it. Because don't trust your memory. You think you're going to remember next year. You're not going to remember next year. You're going to remember something else maybe. We have today often a lot, people coming and saying, well, I remember from 50 years ago by the Rebbe's Fabrig and this and this and this. It's very nice to hear, but don't do anything about that. Don't actually go ahead and make any difference in your life because of what they're saying, because we have no clue if what they're saying is correct or not correct, and if it's just the memory playing games. So, if you documented it, you wrote it down after it happened, you said, here, I wrote it, what do you mean? But when you woke up 50 years later, you says, now I remember. We have the absolute right and obligation to question.
Yeah,
The question
Okay. How did we get from there to Lag B'Omer? Okay, so we were discussing about the we were discussing the smicha, that the Rashbi and the four remaining students remained. It was said Rabbi Meir, right? The Gemara lists Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamor, Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Nechemia. So we said before that Rabbi Meir's yahrzeit is not today. It could be it's today, but it's not. We don't know for certain it's today. Just like we don't know it's tomorrow or any other day. And but they all received smicha on Lag B'Omer on this day. So that's we have to understand that's how they came. Okay, my son got smicha. What's the big deal? My husband got smicha. This was the real smicha, the real deal, as they say. What do you mean the real deal? Back then, smicha originally, not back then. The original idea of smicha is that a rabbi transmits, is that Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the connector between God and the Jewish people in handing over the teachings of Torah, handed over that power, which is both a legal power as well as a spiritual power, to Yeshua ben Nun, who handed over that legal and spiritual power to his students, the Shivim Kanim, and so on and so forth. We had this whole hand-down tradition of smicha, which was a great spiritual empowerment and legal empowerment to the leaders of that generation. And people who had smicha, they had the ability, first they had the divine inspiration to expound on the 13 midas of the Torah and come up with new details of laws and even of biblical status. Many things that the Tanaim came up with weren't known prior to their times and of biblical status. We all know there was a big confusion regarding if Boaz was allowed to marry Rus because she came from Mayav, and that was only later clarified due to one of the Yud Gimmel Midas that one of the Tanaim expounded. So there were things that weren't clear, that they have the biblical power, ordination, to be able to then create new halachas. Today, any rabbi who says, I've discovered a new inference from the Bible and making a new halacha, we take away his smicha and throw him in the loony bin, right? There's no such thing. You can't come up with new halachas today. Your job is to study the already written texts and reveal to people the outcome of those texts. But to create new texts,
Also, back then, there probably wasn't as
even the Reform movement doesn't do that, let me mention. They just take away, they don't add. As far as I know. What is it?
There wasn't as many people getting smicha back then, right?
Correct.
Now
correct. There was no smicha factory. There was
like a factory.
There wasn't like that. There were, there were a lot of rabbis, but here we see there were 5 people who had smicha.
Right.
These were the 5. The students of Rabbi Akiva, they were the 5 who had smicha.
Mm-hmm.
It actually ended with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was the last one to have smicha, to give over. And so this power, this tremendous power of Maser Torah Sheba'al Peh happened today. So it's a huge celebration that there was a continuity of Torah. And when smicha ended, it was a big problem. And we all know there's a famous story here in Sfas. Rabbi Yaakov Beirav, the street is named after him, right down over there. He was the teacher of the Beis Yosef, of Yosef Karo. And he desired to reinstate the real smicha, the real thing. Because it was extinct already for 1,400 years, 1,300 years, since the death of Rabbi Meir. And he desired to bring it back. Why do you want to bring it back? Because at that time, that was the time of the Inquisition, in 1492. And what happened was there were unfortunately a lot of Jews who couldn't stand the pressure of either leave or Christianize, and they converted outwardly, externally, and then they would move to lands which were more accepting, or to Muslim lands, and they would be able to be Jews again. But they did externally accept Christianity. They went through baptism, and they were chayav kares. So the only tshuva for that in this world, so you're not chayav kares anymore, is to get malchus, to get lashes. Now, who has the ability to give halachic, biblical, mandatory lashes? A Sanhedrin. Who has the ability to be part of a Sanhedrin? Someone who has original, real smicha. So Yaakov Beirav wanted to do a great chesed for his generation, reinstate the real smicha, get a Sanhedrin, a bezdin of real smichaniks, and let them give real lashes to all of these once renegade Jews who want to do tshuva and come back to the Jewish community, and have them be exempt from the penalty of excision. And so there's a certain way of how to reinstate smicha. Ideally, smicha is generation, and once the chain is broken, it's over, it's finished. But the Rambam writes of a certain way of reinstating it. And so they followed to the T all those details, but as you can imagine, there was a machlekas that erupted amongst Gedolei Yisrael whether those details were actually met or not. And the chief rabbi of Jerusalem at that time said, you didn't meet those details, and I don't give you permission to do the smicha. There was a big break of relation to Jerusalem and Sfas then. People weren't speaking to each other. There was a big controversy over this, but the Sfas rabbis went ahead and did it. The Beis Yosef received real smicha according to this. He had real smicha. He was one of the 4 students of Rabbi Yaakov Beirav that received real smicha. Rabbi Moshe Alshich was another one. Maybe there were Baz. There were 4 altogether that received the real smicha, and they were part of the bezdin, and they gave malchus to a few. Not all of them. They were able to do this.
So now,
but they didn't continue it because of the controversy. They didn't continue it, so no one has real smicha anymore after that.
Oh wow!
There was a temporary for like few years of real smicha, and it was ended. They only did it for the purpose of the malchus. That's why they did it.
Wow.
But what is written is that because of that, the great Mesiras Nefesh to do it for the sake of these Yidden, the Mechaber merited that Smicha today is defined as studying his works and getting tested on his works. So that's the Messiah that he merited that to happen because of his care and Mesiras Nefesh for those Jews. Okay, so that's another reason behind Lag BaOmer, as we said. Another reason recorded. This is recorded by the Chassam Sofer, that this is the day that the man began to fall. This is in truth a machlokes in Midrashim, but according to some approaches, the man in the desert began falling on this day, which is a great celebration for the women. No more cooking. You don't have to cook anymore, right? And you could, everyone has their own food, no more leftovers, right? Everything was automated, taken care of. So this was a great day. And of course, the man had a very great spiritual effect on the souls of the Jewish people. It was like a spiritual drug at the same time as it was physical sustenance. So it was everything in one. And so this is another reason of celebration. Okay, then we have our last source, which is not recorded in any of the Pesach. None of the Pesach record the source, and that is that this is the day the Rashbi passed away. So the Ramah doesn't write it, the Pri Megadim doesn't write it, the Mechaber doesn't write it. In Kisvei Arizal, in one area he doesn't write, he just writes this is the day that they got Smicha. In another area, it's written in Pri Etz Chaim that on this day, the Rashbi, which was the last of the 24,000 students, passed away. That's what it says there. The problem is that is not correct. He was not the last of the 24,000 students. We have a Gemara. He was so because of that. A lot of people claim that this was a foreign hand that entered into the script, and in the original it doesn't say such a thing. It's a misprint, and therefore some people claim that there is actually no source that Rashbi passed away on Lag BaOmer. And if there is, they question us and say, why wasn't it written in all these Pesachim? Why didn't everyone's here searching for what happened like that? Why did no one write it? Why didn't they write it? Why did that Arizal in Shar Kavanis not write that down? Why did he write about the Smicha? He didn't write anything. Why the only one source we have is with misinformation. So because this is the reason why you may have heard of some who question whether it is the day of the passing of the Rashbi, especially those who are the anti-Zohar group, which Baruch Hashem, they are almost extinct by now. You can have them in a museum. There's only a few left. But there used to be a very major group sourced in Yemenite Jewry called the Dardurim, who the founder of that group was the father of Yosef Kapach. You may have heard of Yosef Kapach. Rabbi Kapach was the leader, the chief rabbi of the Dardurim Jewry, and he had access to one of the original manuscripts of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, which is known as the most accurate. So he was known to put out the most accurate version of the Mishnah Torah, and the Rebbe the Rebbe very much encouraged him, and he had a lot of correspondence with the Rebbe on this. Let's see if we have it here. We probably don't have it here in the set here, but the Rebbe encouraged him tremendously in putting out these manuscripts. But he was what you can call a very controversial figure in the Jewish world, because he was part of this Dardurim group, which basically didn't believe in the Zohar, didn't believe in that the Rashbi wrote it, didn't believe in Lag BaOmer. They were anti everything that had to do with Kabbalah. They didn't believe in Kabbalah.
What was the group's name?
Is the group's name Dardurim?
Oh, they still exist.
Some, yes, they're becoming extinct. There's not a lot of them left. But 30, 40 years ago, they still had a number of about 500 families of them, and they were, so Rav Yosef Kapach was a very big Talmid Chacham, and in his own right. But nonetheless, all the Rabbanim stayed away. Let's say they wouldn't have him be Masada Kedushin, because this came up in the 1900s. In 1910, a Cherem was put out by over 100 Gedolei Yisrael across the world, including Teiman. We shouldn't think that the Yemenites were defending them. Just the opposite. The Yemenites were the one who were most opposed. The Shamayim and the other Yemenites, forgot what they're called. They were all opposed to the Dardurim. And the Kedusha of the Zohar. And basically, there was paskin by over 100 Gedolei Yisrael in the proclamation that anyone who doesn't believe in the Zohar and the Kedusha of the Zohar is an apikeres. Their wine is considered yain nesech. They're not allowed to be Masada Kedushin. They wrote a very severe cherem against the Dardurim. Till today, the Yemenites keep this chayrim. Till today. They know the people, they know the families. So if they know a Dardarim family, oh boy, with them it's fire. With us, we don't know so much, But that's what they say. If you're walking, if you're walking by a Dardarim, there's one Dardarim shul in Yerushalayim. Walking by, they say they need a minyan. Don't go. Don't join them for a minyan. They don't believe in the Zayah.
Where is that?
It's the exact location. Could be they switch.
But that's terrible. That's terrible.
It's the first time you're hearing that in jury we have different groups.
No, I've never heard of such a group before.
Okay,
This is the first time. Wow.
There is one.
Wow.
I guess anyone who wanted to start it, they should know it's already been done.
God forbid. Really.
So so this is the Dardarim group. So they are mainly the ones who are professing nothing. It's not the Rashbi's day passing, but the truth is. So what is the answer to that? So one of our main sources that this is the day that the Rashbi passed away is from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe writes in a Maimer, L'haven inyan hilulu de Rashbi b'Lag Baimer, to understand the day of the passing of Rav Shimon bar Yochai in Lag Baimer. And this was the tradition. It's not, Judaism is allowed to have sources based on mouth-to-mouth tradition, even if it's not written in a book. Something that's been handed over, from generation to generation is itself a source. And we do find written in some Achreinim that they write that this is well known in the whole world, that this is the day that the Rashbi passed away. Even the Chassam Sofer was very opposed to the whole idea of the celebrations of Lag BaOmer for various reasons. He agreed it was the day of Rabbi Shimon's passing. He didn't argue on that premises that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai passed away on this day. And the source is the tradition. That is basically the source. And as I said, it is written in Sfarim. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I won't ask any more questions B'Ezrat Hashem, because I feel like I'm taking up a lot of the class. But I wanted to ask about. I heard that he's not buried there. Is that
That's
true?
probably also another Dardarim lie.
I heard it from a few people.
Yeah,
He's not buried there.
they have a campaign. They do it, and they try to catch people. You have to understand, us Jews, we have, as long as a lot of people, we have this type of nature where we like always going against the norm. We love going against the tide. So it's very catchy when you see everyone going like, and you'll be the one to clear out. No, he's not there. You'll be the one. So unfortunately, you have some people that type of nature. So they don't look too much into it. They get today you have also the generation of believe every WhatsApp that you receive, and so therefore all these fake news is very easy to spread by interest groups that have special interests of spreading what they want. You may not have, but it could be the friend has.
Yeah, that's true.
Bottom line is that this is the tradition. It's a very strong tradition, and also to make mention is that they went to Oxford, England. The Oxford Library is one of the oldest libraries in the world. They have one of the oldest colleges in the world, right? In the city, 1200s. So they have a library there that contains the original manuscripts of the Pri Eitz Chaim, the original handwritten manuscripts. And there they looked at it and they took a picture of it. I have the picture on my computer. And there, the version is not like what we have today, but it's still the version doesn't say the Rashbi is one of the 24,000 students, which was our whole reason of complaint against the authenticity of it. But it doesn't say that at all. But it does say that this is the day the Rashbi passed away. So we see that that's been cleared, and Rizal did write that the Rashbi passed away on this day of Lag BaOmer. It's interesting because we have a lot of due to our ability of access to these, old manuscripts, we have a lot of different debates that have been clarified from people actually going to the museums and checking them out. There were a lot of debates regarding inscribable letters of the Sefer Torah that were clarified, like rabbinic debates amongst Poskim, were clarified through the Hebrew University has the Sefer Torah of the Ran, which was written, 800 years ago. 700 years ago, he literally wrote Rabbeinu Nissim, one of the great Rishonim of Sfarad, of Spain. And so they went and they took pictures and they studied it and they saw how he wrote it, and that determined to us, how interesting that Sefer Torah. There's a big dispute of how to write the word Tsuadaka. Now we know if one word is miswritten, it's possible. All Sefer Torah is possible. Should it be written with an aleph or with a hey? So the Chabad is to write it with an aleph. And that Sefer Torah of the Ran was found written with an aleph. Anyways, so a lot of the good things have come up with these museums that are guarding these. The Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur the following: one is to rejoice with all his heart and soul on Lag BaOmer, make a day of feasting, and sing praise to Hashem and read from the book of Tehillim. So you're supposed to increase in Tehillim reading on Lag BaOmer. However, he writes as a warning, however, not to enter into a state of drunkenness and frivolity, heaven forbid. We have a hint in the Shulchan Aruch as to the holiness or greatness and simcha of Lag BaOmer over the fact it's written in chapter 428 in the Shulchan Aruch that Lag BaOmer and Purim always fall on the same day of the week. So when you know that Purim fell on Thursday, Lag BaOmer is going to fall on Thursday as well.
Is there a reason?
They're connected. There's a simcha, a special simcha on Lag BaOmer. And also regarding, we know that Purim is connected with Mordechai, who was a Gilgal of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the gematria of Lag BaOmer is Moshe. So which it says Rashbi was also a Gilgal of Moshe. So they all share, the same ideas of the day. Of the customs of this day, so we already mentioned regarding increasing in simcha, increasing in joy on Lag BaOmer, and one shouldn't do chas v'shalom any signs of mourning, as is recorded in the Arizal Pri Eitz Chaim, that one time Rabbi Avram Alevi was one of the students of the Arizal, and he was with the Arizal on Lag BaOmer by Rashbi, and he davened mincha, and he said Nachem, as he would say Nachem in every prayer of Shemona Esrei since the destruction of the temple. That was his custom. What we do on Tisha B'Av, he did every day to lament the destruction. And the Arizal was then summoned by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He said, I have something I need to speak to you about. And he was very upset with the Arizal. How dare your student say Nachem, lament the destruction of the temple on the day of my celebration. And he says, tell your student that due to him having sadness on my day of simcha, unfortunately, he will bring upon himself a real reason for sadness. So, these are holy people, we're discussing. And obviously, but from this we learn the severity of chas v'shalom showing any mourning by Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon takes it very seriously, and at the same measure, I would say, to show any anger or kpeda, when you have, unfortunately, with the bus situation they're on, you can have it's a big challenge on a person's midas. The Gemara says a person's character is challenged in three things: with his anger, with his cup, meaning his drink, and with his money. I think they'll have to add with the bus situation in Lag BaOmer. He's challenged with that as well. So obviously a person has to be especially careful, and obviously Yisrael, the day of Rabbi Akiva, the day of Rashbi, by Meron, and to have appropriate way of act appropriately by the tzaddik.
What do you mean their cup? Their
drinking, alcohol.
Oh, alcohol. Okay, got it. Right.
Alcohol. Okay, as we already mentioned, there's no tachanun on Lag BaOmer. That's starting from mincha before, so that's starting from Wednesday. By mincha, we already omit tachanun. All the morning customs for Ashkenazim cease, except for cutting hair, which Chabad is makbet to follow until Erev Shavuos, based on Kabbalah. Also, many Sephardim follow based on Kabbalah. We don't care. We discussed this last week. We already said the person should have a special festive meal on Lag BaOmer, increase in saying Tehillim. There's a custom of eating carobs, of eating baktzor on Lag BaOmer, in commemoration of the food that Rashbi had to eat for 13 years. While he was in the cave. You have to be careful though to check for bugs. Carobs have a lot of infestation, so if you do buy or pluck one from a tree, look out for webby material. Webby material is a sign of infestation, and you should just throw it out. Get a different one. There is a sort of Orlan carob trees, so if you see a carob tree anywhere here in the public, you can just pull off some carobs and eat them.
Also, be careful with your teeth. They're very hard.
Well, don't get a raw one. Get one that's fresh.
Yeah.
That's one that's ripe. When we don't say shechiyanu on carobs, some do, but the main thing is not shechiyanu on carobs. because it's not considered really a good food of good sustenance. Another minhag is to eat eggs on Lag Baimer. This is an old Chabad custom, of Chassidim. In the memoirs of Isaac Humler, he writes that the Chassidim would go into the fields on Lag Baimer and drink mashka and eat hard-boiled eggs. Why? Doesn't say, but that's what was done. The Rebbe's custom was to eat hard-boiled eggs that had brown food coloring added to the water, so the eggs shells look brown. The reason for this is because white eggs is usually eaten by a velus. We eat it usually for the Sudas Havra, so we don't want to make people think this is like morning, so therefore they would color the eggshell.
You can do that with tea bags. Yeah.
Oh, with a tea bag, that's an interesting idea. But I'm sure it would have a kind of a flavor. So choose a tea bag, choose maybe mint, choose a flavor that you like in your eggs.
Black tea.
Brown onion skin also. Yeah, that sounds better than mint.
Or you can do some beets, right? Put some beets inside, you'll get red eggs. Okay. But others actually avoid eating eggs because of this. They don't want any similarity to morning. Bows and arrows, right, is a custom of playing with bows and arrows. In many Hasidic circles, the Admor plays with a bow and arrow. They do a whole ceremony over it. It's interesting, but that's not the custom in Chabad. But the idea of playing with bows and arrows, right, that is brought in Bnei Yisachar, the Sefer Bnei Yisachar. The bow is similar to the rainbow, and it's commemorating that Reb Shimon's generation did not see the rainbow as the tzaddik protected the generation. They didn't need the pact to protect it. So the pilgrimage to Meron, I think that's quite obvious. We're all going to be doing that. We live so close. The real way of doing it is to walk there. That's the way it was always done. They didn't take buses. The original pilgrimage, they would walk through the Tzfas Meron forest. I think it takes about 45 minutes if you know the way, if you don't get lost.
3 hours.
3 hours. That's if you get lost. Or you take the road. Not if you go through the forest.
45 minutes. It's really short.
It's about an hour, yeah.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Doable.
It's definitely doable. Again, if you know where you're going. If you're going in circles or you're going like this, and it'll take a lot longer. But do they have organized hikes to there?
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea if you don't bring little children with you.
Yeah.
Actually, you need what to do in the.
Oh, it's gonna be the 90s. Yeah. It's always hot like that. Everyone takes some water, and also don't forget, you can do by nighttime. You can do Wednesday night. That's how it's done. You go Wednesday night. It's already dark. You can't go at dark because you can't see anything. There's no lights in the forest. But by Shkia time, it's not so hot anymore. The sun is already behind the mountains. Okay. So, I'll just mention the words of Rabbi Margolius, the author of Midas Rashbi. He writes like this he wrote a whole sefer on the pilgrimage to Meron, which it is the greatest pilgrimage in Jewish history, in the Jewish calendar that we know of. And probably was the greatest that ever took place, as far as aside, of course, for the temple, Shalosh Regal. But I'm talking about during exile, this is seemingly the greatest pilgrimage that we've ever seen, and we have many sperm written regarding the pilgrimage, and how it's done. And so one of the authors who wrote this in the early 1900s, or Margolis, he writes the following: one must be extremely careful to act appropriately while visiting Rabbi Shimon, not to perform any frivolous matters while there, not to mention matters of sin, heaven forbid. He says, don't mention anything, even to Duva, don't mention anything about sin. Rabbi Shimon doesn't want to hear it. Rabbi Shimon is known as a happy Adma. He's a happy Rebbe. This is in contrast to that which we see done today, in which people have frivolous parties at the site of the tzaddik. And certainly this causes the soul of the tzaddik to flee and seek refuge elsewhere.
Wow, that's terrible.
If, however, the visitors come properly spiritually prepared after repentance, then certainly the tzaddik partakes in the visit and hears his prayers. This Rabbi Margolis was witness to the famous miracle that happened in 1923 of Lag Baimer, of where a Jewish child who had come for his Halacha after being born after his mother, who was childless for many years, came and promised the Rashbi that she would call her son Shimon and bring him for his Halacha to Meron. So he was born, and she did the Halacha there. And he fell. He basically on that Shabbos he died from malaria.
The child?
The child died from malaria, and everyone was freaking out, and the British authorities were also freaking out. They wanted to segregate everybody that was there because, malaria was a major killer back then. It killed tens of millions of people every year.
Yeah.
And it spread like wildfire. So anyone who was in the vicinity would have to be locked up. So there was pandemonium that broke out. And the way the story, he tells over the story that he witnessed the mother went over to the, she broke through the police barricade where her son was next to the kever, and she went, picked him up, and she began screaming to Rashbi, this is your child, how can this happen? How can he die? Please bring him back, bring him back. And everyone left the room. They left them together. The dead child was there. And after some minutes, they began hearing the child crying for his mother. And they said everybody was shocked, including the British police and the British doctor. They witnessed a tchias hamesim.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now Rizal writes in Kriyat Chaim that when he went on Lag BaOmer to Meron, he would actually dance with Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai, physically. Shimon came with, in a physical body and would dance with him. This is recorded in a sefer, Kriyat Chaim. So it's a very special time, a very special place for Yeshuas, for tefillas, as we know. But as I said before, a person has to be mindful of the holiness of the area.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's such a powerful energy there when you go. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, 100%.
It really is.
Okay, we'll do one more thing. What is the whole idea of Chai Rotel? You may have seen this, people publicizing Chai Rotel. What is this? What do they want from us? They want money. That's clearly what they want. They want donations. But what is this? Just ask. We're collecting tzedakah. What is Chai Rotel? So the Rotel was the old measuring term used, like instead of liter, it was called Rotel in Russia. That's what it was called, the Rotel, like 10 Rotel, 10 liters. And there's actually more. It's actually, one Rotel is about 3 liters of liquid. Okay, it's about around that 3 point something. So there is a minhag of basically a skula that if you donate 18 rotel, which is 54 liters of liquid, of beverage, so that has a certain school of having children. It's written in Sfarim. So that's why people are publicizing. I don't know what it has to do with Meron specifically, because I haven't seen it publicized anywhere else. But Lag BaOmer specifically, they all publicize. I guess, got in and people want segula, so they publicize the Chai Rotel skula. So donate Chai Rotel for a school of children, a school of this. And that's equivalent to 54 liters of liquid, which is about 200 shekel. To purchase 54 liters of liquid, about 200 shekels. So that is the school. A lot of people do it, but they don't give liquid. They donate to Lag BaOmer parade 100. The amount that's worth 180 or 100 or 200 shekel, which would be equivalent to 54 liters of liquid. So this is just the idea of it. We have a lot of very interesting and different minhagim that have come about due to this pilgrimage, and we merit to be right here, right next door to all the action where everything is happening. So Meretz Hashem, we should all have a great and terrific Lag BaOmer celebration. We should celebrate with Mashiach Tzidkenu with Pesach sacrifice today.
Amen.
We'll all then make our trip back to Meron.
Amen.
Right.
You're not the God years.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left. We're going to end over here for tonight. If you have any questions, we'll take. But next week in Meretz Hashem is class as usual. We're going to continue Halichas Bas Yisrael.
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, we're all going to be in Meron. We're going to have class
Okay.
with Rabbi Shimon.
Exactly should we meet here?
It's never a good idea to set up to meet people in Meron. Just let God and the whirlpool drive you to whoever you bump into. But